tree, we open new doors. Tips and tales shared, we laugh and we learn.
There we go. Good morning and welcome back to the channel, Grand Colombia. And welcome to another Coffee Time Live here in Armenia, Quindío, Colombia. All kinds of technical errors this morning. Hopefully you only saw a couple glitches, but that's just the way it goes. And they're all on me. Well, sort of. Well, it doesn't matter. All right, so right now it's about 70 degrees. And we're going to have a high today of about 73, so we're almost there. Low is 63, and I tell you, it's been pretty cool. Normally, I sleep with a sheet, and recently I've been using a blanket, which is like unheard of. Been here going on 7 years, and never used blankets until just recently. I think my blood's thinning. You know what? I got to take blood thinners. Maybe that's it. B. Nick, good morning. How are you doing? Turtle, how are you? Who else is here? Well, it looks like a bunch of people here. Got an interesting topic today, and I'm going to get to pretty quick because I don't have many headlines. Olga, how are you? All because of Mike, because Mike is leaving Colombia and he's going to Panama. And his current plan is to go to Panama and live there for 6 months because it's so easy to get a visa there, and then come here for 6 months because you can be here for 6 months without getting a visa. And I don't know. We'll see how it works out. I was originally going to do that with Ecuador, but then it's like, why would I spend 6 months in Ecuador when I'd really rather spend it all here? But excuse me, like I've always said, I have certain ties to Colombia that is not normal for most people. So take everything that I like or don't like with a grain of salt. You know, we all have our opinions. I've been, not to get gross, but I'm kind of curious because there's quite a few people that live here. For the last month or so, I wake up in the morning and I go through endless Kleenexes clearing out my sinuses. Just very liquidy, nothing gross or nothing. And it takes me about an hour, and I have no idea what that's about. And then for the rest of the day, I'm good to go. I don't get it. Pueblo 22. Is that you? That's Pueblo. That's Mike, I think. Okay, so yeah, that was probably kind of gross. The exchange rate, we're at 37.57, and it's kind of a bummer. So I decided to look back on charts because Turtle's always sending me the last year, and he sent me one the other day. I think it was like a 2-day chart or something, and it showed it dropping off a cliff. So here's a 2-year chart. So here's where we were 2 years ago, and we're about the same as where it was back then. But then I decided take a look at a 10-year chart, and it reminded me that back when I came here, I was trying to remember what it was, and this chart helped. It was right around 2,700. And then we had the high around middle of 2022. We were flying high. We were living like kings. We were the condor of the Andes, and it was over 5,000. It got to the highest I could find without really trying to break it down and study it was around 5,088. Those were the glory days. It's like you had so much money, you pull your hand out of your pocket and money just fly everywhere. It was just crazy. Okay, maybe not like that, but it was nice because it was windfall. And now we're back to middle ground. And the idea that it will perpetually increase just isn't reality, although you start to fall into that because if you look for a number of years up until the 5,000, that's kind of the way it operated, just kind of mostly went up. So anyway, it's what it is. And I'm trying to figure out a lot of things change. So, it's like a month or two ago, maybe it was a couple months ago, I made my prediction for this fall. Well, we're well into the fall. And the thing is, from day to day, different things happen, different things change. And it's more complicated because it's what happens in the U.S. plus what happens in Colombia. Colombia has as much effect on it as the U.S. has effect on it. So it's almost an impossibility to actually predict. You could put, if conditions remain what they are at this point in time or this week, it'll probably do this. And that's what I did a couple months ago. And I was kind of kicking myself because I knew better. But so I went to Kira, my chat GPT, and I said, well, what do you think it's going to be? Of course, she gave me the usual chat non-committal answer, and you have to peg them down. No mucus flow problems here. Yeah. All right. So it's me. I'm on so much medication now. Who knows what effect it has? So anyway, and one of them is it could very well be related to that. Could be a side effect. So this prediction is pretty tough. We've had recently what goes on in Venezuela, what Petro goes out and says in the news, has been counteracted by the fact that oil drives a lot. It didn't help when they pulled the U.S. pulled tariffs off of coffee and chocolate and some other things. What you hear on TV, well, this country, they're all going to get this percentage. Well, it depends on anything that the U.S. wants and needs and can't really produce. They don't really have tariffs on those things. U.S. doesn't produce coffee. It doesn't produce chocolate. It wants it, so it removes the tariffs. So it may put them on initially and then go through initially just to make a point, but then it goes through item by item by item and makes a determination on what those items are going to be, which is what most countries do, actually. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that it's like all this big deal in the U.S. because they're only doing what almost every other country actually does, which is why you'll have Canada charging a lot more on milk products coming from the U.S., but on other things like certain things with automobiles, they'll have no tariff on it. It's just how it's done. It's just the U.S. didn't do that forever. Basically gave everybody a free ride. So those kind of predictions are kind of foolhardy, kind of ridiculous. But I did ask my chat GPT and got her to narrow it down. And she came up with, we're probably going to hit 3,700, which was, great wisdom because we already did. But for December. And then she claims that we're going to go up to between 3,800 and 4,000 next year. Again, that's such a narrow range. It's like, but that's what happens when when you ask AI. They're really stupid at heart, and because there is no way to actually predict it. So there you go. So yeah, I want to mention exchange rate. You have a lot to talk about with me, so let's get to. I've only got 2 news headlines, or maybe 3, because there's almost nothing going on right now. Okay, in Calarca, they busted some marijuana drug ring of about 20 people that were notorious. They called them the emoji gang because they were putting little Facebook emojis on the packages that they would sell. And I don't know, it's like nothing like bring attention to yourself. And so because of that, they were able to track them down and stop. It's like Barney. Anyway, it's good. I'm glad. That's good. Um, Everything. Tommy, I was searching for something and ran across a prediction of 4,600 by the end of 2026. Yeah, Chat GPT originally gave much wider ranges and it went up around 4,600 because there's all kinds of predictions out there. And what the AI does, it goes out and it looks at all these other predictions. And that's what she gave me first. And then I said, yeah, but forget what other people are predicting. Don't look at that. I want you to look specifically at the cost of oil and all the things that come into play, the exchange rate, not the interest rate in the US, the interest rate in Colombia. Most of what drives has to do with investment in Colombia. That's more of an immediate direct effect. If you follow this at all, unless it's something big and drastic. But here, if investments pull back a little bit, there's a big effect on the exchange rate. And if something happens, they get more investment, even if it's a little bit, then the exchange rate gets worse for us. So it's a fool's game, like I said, but you know, we live by it, so we got to play with it, right? All right. So news headlines. Where are we? Let's.
Here comes the latest from Kindio with rhythm and flavor, up to date news. It's starting now.
Okay, for those living here, the grace period for the new Pico y Placa traffic restriction in Armenia runs until November 30th. Penalties begin on December 1st. Now, if you're not aware, if you're not from here, all over Colombia, they try to manage traffic, and that's by coming up with one day during the week, Monday through Friday, of the last number of your plate minus 3. So they assign the day, there'll be two numbers, 2 and 3 is assigned for Friday as an example. So I can't drive on Friday down into Armenia. It had a map, and that included central and some of the south, but you go around the outskirts. You could run down 19 and you could go down Centenario, kind of out around the edges. So if you need to go to the airport, you just take those outlay, the routes that are on the outer edge of town. Yeah, I can speak. Well, for 6 months, it's an experiment because traffic has gotten bad. They don't even have what they consider a rush hour anymore. They figure that pretty much from 9 to 5, it's a rush hour everywhere. And it has been getting, as poor as Colombia is supposed to be. They sure drive an awful lot of cars. So they've expanded the area. So it's now all roads within the confines of Armenia. So, for example, before I could get in my car and drive over to Centenario to the Flora Mall, and I could go in and use that grocery store if I needed to for some reason. A car is useful if you're going to the grocery store and you're getting 3 or 4 bags. So it's like I would use it for that. And you're not really going into town. Well, I can't do that anymore. Well, the other thing is I'm selling my car. By the way, buy my car. It's about $5 million off the lowest price I could find out there, and it's better than everyone I looked at because it's pristine. It's still got factory warranty. Buy my car. Um, so anyway, all of Armenia within confines of its jurisdiction, which is everything, you can no longer drive on whatever day you're assigned between the hours of 7 in the morning and 7 at night. So for me, I can drive every day except Friday. There's no restrictions on Saturday and Sunday anyway. So it's kind of big news. And right now, if they catch you, they're just cautioning you. But come December 1st, they're fining you. And I got one once, but it was paid for by the rental company because they screwed up. They gave me a car on a day I wasn't supposed to be driving. And I gave them holy hell for it. And they said, no, we'll take care of it. And they did. They paid for it. But it was somewhere around, I think it was around $200 or $300. And they can actually, under certain circumstances, they can actually tow your car. Although you never really hear of it, but technically they can. So you got to pay attention to it. Okay, next one is, I was digging for headlines, believe me. I'm scraping the barrel here. Armenia slows inflation in October, but money remains tight. Restaurants and education drive up the cost of living. Pareda and Armenia are better than 70% of the rest of the country. So that's good. But when it mentions restaurants and how recently I was treated to lunch at a restaurant. And thank you, Mike, by the way. And I was shocked at the menu prices. I don't go out very often anymore. But still, it's like the last time I was out, they had jumped up to like double and go in and the same restaurant, it was like huge. What the hell? So I come back and I dig around at different restaurants and different prices because you can see the menus online and like that. And everybody, all these restaurants, the prices have skyrocketed. Groceries still cost pretty much what they have after we had our big bump last year, I think, where inflation was catching up. Things are pretty much, they've been pretty stable. But a restaurant, it's crazy. So you can go for two people and spend for dinner for two at a nice restaurant. That money could buy you groceries for the month. Now, I don't remember if it's like that. I've been gone from the U.S. for a long time. So the percentage or the comparison, I don't know if it holds true, but I don't know. I was shocked. Mike, I think he goes out more because he didn't seem fazed by it, but I was just blown away because I already thought I had the shock. And then I just got shocked again. It's like, what the hell is going on here? But other things, it's not necessarily that way. Anyone can predict anything and nothing, something if they're wrong. Well, yeah, that's true. Well, I get harassment emails sometimes. Hey, you dumbass! You said it was going to be da 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 da. It's what do I know? What's the scope? If you're driving from Pareda to Cali, I don't know what you mean. You mean the Pico y Placa? It doesn't apply. Pico y Placa is like within a city. So I don't know Pareda's rule. We have particular rules here. You can find them in the city's Al Qadiyah. Sorry, Al Qadiyah. it'll be the Alcaldía. It'll be a .gov.co website for every city. They have one, and in there you can search a pico y placa, and it'll come up with all the rules. Generally, if you're escaping town, you can do it. If you go into a town, let's say, for example, I go into Cali, and they're having the pico y placa. If you have your toll receipt from within the last 48 hours, this is throughout the country, showing that you came in, you're from out of town, and here's my toll receipt, then you get a pass. So I hope that helps. And to get to there, you're going to go through from where you are 5 or 6 tolls between Pineda and Cali. So you'll have toll receipts. You can just get pulled over. You can just hand them a bunch of them. Because it wouldn't make sense if they were, you got to go to Cali for business, but you show up because they're all on different days. And, so it's like, well, I can't go do business unless it's on my day, or, it wouldn't make sense. So that's actually in the rules that I've read in the past. So, okay. So that's it on inflation. The last one, I think I mentioned this before, but it came up again recently. So I think it was actually a different, I think it's for this year. And the one I mentioned before was last year. And it has to do with this World Bakers Contest that takes place, where they tried the more popular breads that are submitted to see who's got the best bread in the world. And the same as last year, Colombia placed number 1 with its pan de bono, which is pretty awesome bread. So it got number 1. It really surprises me because I think there's better ones out there, but in the world, but doesn't matter. It's, it's what the judging was, and it was pan de bono. And the interesting thing was, in the top 10, it had several other breads. So Colombia just kind of swept the contest. And you wouldn't think so. You wouldn't think of food in general of Colombia standing out because it, tends to be kind of bland and samey. It's like, if you like a lot of variety, there's not a ton of variety as compared to many other countries. Although compared to South America, it's fine. But if you compared it to Mexico or Puerto Rico or the United States, there's just so many, there's so much variety in those places as compared to here. But then the history, there's a reason for it. And it's changing a lot, going back to the restaurants costing a lot. There's so much international influence now. And back a couple decades ago when I was here, there was zero. There was no international influence anywhere that you could find. Maybe in Bogota, I don't know, but excuse me. All right. So let's see. That's all I got for the news head. Oh, I got one more thing. Yeah, there was another. I gotta pull it up here. Here it is. They just signed. They signed and put a deposit on a contract for 17 new fighter jets. And I'll show you a quick news article.
The air superiority aircraft, whose purchase was finalized yesterday by the government, will be equipped with the latest digital combat tools and even with capabilities that allow them to deactivate radars that may detect them.
They're promoting it here as an air superiority aircraft. Now, the Gripen is actually a hell of a good aircraft. It's relatively inexpensive, which is why smaller countries are buying them. It's very popular. You can land it on a back road. It doesn't require a very long runway for landing or takeoff. It's a very simple design. It's easily repaired, very durable. So it's a fantastic aircraft, but it's very far from having air superiority. And I was wondering why they keep promoting that. Well, one, to justify the immense cost in Colombia. That's probably the first thing are people asking, why are you buying these things when, whatever here, fill in the blank. But if you compare it to the countries around you, like Venezuela or Ecuador or whatever, it would be air superiority. It would be a massive leap. And so that's the only thing I could think of.
These are the weapons that the technical team will install in less than an hour on any of the 15 Gripen E single-seat aircraft and the 2 Gripen Plaza, whose contract for 16.5 billion pesos was signed by the Colombian government with the Swedish defense and security company SAAF, and which includes equipment, weapons, and training. In this main plant of the Gripen aircraft in Linköping, Sweden, all the avionics, artificial intelligence, radars, sensors, infrared search and tracking, and electronic warfare systems are manufactured.
Okay, enough of that. You get the point. The contract, they said that it's hundreds of billions of pesos. That's actually just their initial payment. This is over the course of, I think it's 2032. So they're going to get the first ones next year. And over the course of from next year to 2032, they'll be receiving 17 in total, 15 single seaters and 2 double seaters. Double seats are really for training mostly. So I don't know. I look for comments. I haven't seen much for comments. This is a pretty new thing, and I figured there'd be a lot of people howling about it. So far, not yet. Now we're going to get to the main topic here in a second, but first I have to do my duty. So hang on. Be less than a minute. Looking for smarter ways to browse and enjoy your favorite content without ads? Get the Perplexity Pro Bundle. That's an AI setup. With Rumble Premium for $19.99 a month when you sign up before December 31st, normally a $29.99 value. With Rumble Premium, you'll get an ad-free viewing experience across all your devices and access to exclusive premium content. No interruptions, just the videos and streams you love anytime, anywhere. Plus, Perplexity Pro boosts your productivity with unlimited research, unlimited uploads, exclusive member perks, and access to the latest and most advanced AI models for faster, smarter answers every day. Save over 30% on this powerful bundle. Head to rumble.com/premium before December 31st to sign up and unlock your premium experience. Okay, that wasn't too bad. I like them when they're short and sweet. If you're into AI, it's actually a damn good deal because it's got 3 different, including Chat GPT. They're paid versions, so you've got 3 different AIs, so that they're basically unlimited use. The free ones you can only use, you can only pose so many, maybe 10 questions or 5 questions in a day, and then you can't use it for another 24 hours. And they kind of suck. I have to subscribe to a particular software, and with that software, I get a free subscription to Chat GPT. So I have to pay, but it's something that I've always had to pay. It's part of doing a channel. I've always had to do it. And so they threw that in recently, this year. And so I've had access, and that's why I play more and more with it in training my own, because it's pretty awesome. It really sucks when you first start playing with it, but as you figure it out and you start training it and realize how you can train it and how you can keep everything in memory and all of that, it can become very useful. It saves me because I'm always researching things, and I I can have it go gather up the things I might be interested in, and then I can look through them. So it saves me a lot of wasted time. All right. So let's see. We're going to get to our topic. I don't have anything else here. Just checking it out. All right. What would make you leave Colombia? Well, the title is actually, I don't know, what was it? 10 reasons to leave Colombia, I think. Because I came up with 10. It was kind of a coincidence. I thought maybe I'd come up with 9 or 10, and I would still say 10 because that's what you always see headlines. But it really boils down to what would make you leave Colombia. And so based on anecdotal research I've done, people that I've talked to over the years, spurred because Mike caused me to think about this topic. Let me hit the 10 I came up with. Healthcare limitations. Now, bear with me because, I talk about how good the healthcare is, and it is. But it's one of the biggest reasons people will rethink staying. Colombia has great doctors, but access is uneven. In other words, in big cities or even medium cities like Armenia, you have options. But in small towns, you don't. Or it's a bit of a distance. So, for example, when Mike was living out in Pueblo Tapao, if he had an emergency, in order to arrange whatever transportation, get himself into a hospital, all of that would take enough time to where certain emergencies like heart attacks could be the difference between life and death. Now, for me, in an ambulance, I'm 5 or 6 minutes away from rolling into a hospital. But if you're living out in a smaller town, if you're living out in Circasia or Calarca or Caimo or any of those outlying places that are almost Armenia but not quite, and this goes for every city, if you have a little distance between you, then it can become an issue. And as you retire and get older, these things can be a problem. So emergency response is pretty much always going to be slower. Specialist appointments, sometimes, depending on what your insurance is, can take weeks or months. Now, I have Sura, and here in Armenia, Sura is a company that's fantastic. I make an appointment. If I need an appointment for something, I can have it in the next few days. And with a specialist, maybe in a week. But there's about 12 different brands of insurance. And if you've got any of those other brands, if you got Sanitas, for example, second best throughout Colombia for the most part. But I know people that have them, and they might have to wait 3, 4, or 5 weeks to get an appointment. So that can be frustrating. Now, if you're from Canada or England, you're used to that. But if you're from the USA, that doesn't go over very well. So that's an issue. EPS systems, just like the old HMOs, they require approvals and sometimes paperwork, again, depending on who you're dealing with. And if you get hit with something serious like cancer or heart issues or major surgery, some expats reach a point where they say, I need medical attention in the infrastructure I grew up with. So that's a big one. Health can be the first and biggest turning point. Second one, and this has a lot to do with Mike, visa law changes. Now, most of the frustration from people that I've talked to is information that's actually bad information. And then the second thing is there is a certain human aspect when it comes to approvals. Like some person sitting in Bogota having a bad day might end up rejecting a higher percentage than they would reject on a normal day. But let's talk visas a little bit, because a lot of newcomers don't realize how unstable immigration rules can be in Colombia. Visas tend to change for 3 main reasons. One, politics. Every government has a different immigration philosophy. It doesn't mean there's different laws, but they can have a different philosophy. Another reason, economics. If a country needs money, income requirements go up. Not just income requirements, but fees can go up. And if you get rejected and have to come back and file again, if there's a time period, you don't have to in every case, but sometimes you do, then they can get more fees. For example, the M visa, the way it's written in law, and that actually hasn't changed even when they did a revamp in 2022. The M visa you can get from 1 to 3 years. And it used to be everybody got 3 years. I got here, I got 3 years. But it changed. And it changed because post-COVID or during COVID or whatever, needed money because things were shut down and, like everywhere, they had issues. And so all of a sudden, all the visas you saw were only 1 year because that would mean they'd have to come back after that year and buy another one instead of waiting 3 years to buy another one. And so, you could say it's kind of sleazy. It was always in the law. It was always their discretion to do that. It's just that they never applied it. And all of a sudden you did. It felt very unfair because maybe it kind of was, but it's their laws. It's what they do. And so that could piss off a lot of people. And then you got migration pressure. If too many foreigners come at once, rules tighten up. And you'll see that from time to time. And that explains why there's differences perceived, or in reality, you'll have somebody that around holiday time when a lot of people are coming in and getting tourist visas or M visas, things like that, they get overloaded. And one of their ways to ease their burden is to get stricter on the rules. So that they'll always follow the rules. It's just they don't apply some rules that are there unless they decide to do it. So those rules, it's like, it isn't necessarily that they have to apply them, but the rules always remain. And worst case, that they can fall back on those rules. I don't know if that makes sense. It's hard to explain the mentality of somebody sitting there with a book of rules, yet they have a certain amount of discretion. And if it's going to make their job easier, they're going to back things up. Another thing that can catch people off guard and piss people off is that visa rules, at least the way they're applied, can change practically overnight. Income requirements can jump. And that's also with the exchange rate. The exchange rate, the way it is now, you need more dollars than you needed before. Documentation rules shift. What they require and whether they give it a pass or not. There are people that get by with very basic police reports, and there's others that have to jump through hoops to get one that they'll accept, to get the FBI report in. Categories out of the blue can get redefined or even canceled. People who are fully compliant 1 year may suddenly not qualify the next. It's rare that you get caught up in that. Here's the thing, but I would be foolish to say it doesn't happen. What Mike goes through is real. And I think he's identified the reason he goes through it. He has an issue every time. He always gets his visa, but he has to jump through hoops and get extra information every time he does it. And it's not that he's making that up. It's real. However, if you talk to 100 people, he'd probably be the only one. So it's not like it's a blanket. However, if you do run into it, it can be very frustrating. So visa insecurity is a big reason expats can decide to move on. They can just say, oh, to hell with it, I'm not going to deal with this. What they don't know, and there are some exceptions, Mike feels he's found one in Panama, and it looks like he probably has. But most countries experience the same thing. I went through Ecuador. There's nobody that I've ever talked to in Colombia that went through anything near what I had to put up with to go through the expenses, the $3,000 more I had to spend, all the extra documentation that I had to get. It took 6 months to get the damn thing done. It was insane, but it wasn't all that unusual. That's the saddest part. And it was so frustrating because I come up with these documentations and apostille, and I go in on the final thing, and they hand the documentation back that we were waiting on, saying they didn't need it. You just had me spend 2 months getting this stuff, and now you're telling me you didn't need it because it's just a different person. So, so if you want to go to another country, many countries you're going to experience some of these same things. So know it going in. I got a big question here. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Do you know anyone in the chat that is currently going back and forth between Colombia and USA or other countries, staying the 180 days on passport? I know we have a couple viewers that do that, but they do it more for family issues or things like that. Like they intended to be here full time, but then something came up, and so they're using that. But I think people do it. Like I say, I was going to do that with Ecuador until I was spending time here, and I'm going, why? I don't even want to go back. I mean, it was nice. If I were to go back, it would have only been some friends that I missed. Well, since then, they've moved to different places in Ecuador. One's actually moved out of Ecuador. They're in Europe. So there's nothing there for me because the infrastructure, the bureaucracy, the potholes you break your leg in. I mean, in so many ways, it kind of sucks. And so you had to have, it was a scale. And you had to have a lot of good things to outweigh the things that really sucked. And there's way more sucky things there. As a matter of fact, the only country I can think of that was maybe worse is parts of Mexico, but the Philippines. There's a ton of things in the Philippines that are practically unbearable, and they have to be balanced by a whole bunch of things that are special about it. And that's the way Ecuador was. I come to Colombia, and for me, in my experiences, Colombia didn't have that many things that were bad, but it had a ton of things that were awesome. And so for me, it's not a question. But when it comes to different countries and visas and things, don't be surprised you run into these. Just like you don't often hear the things I'm talking about, it's the same with other countries. Those things aren't advertised and promoted. And for me, I'm putting something out that almost assuredly will do the opposite of going viral, because anything that is perceived as negative gets kind of shoved to the side. It doesn't become a popular video. Okay, so we got the peso risk and the rising costs. Talked a little bit this morning about it. And retirees especially can hit kind of hard. So here, since 2021, rent has gone up pretty much double. Again, depends where you live in Colombia. Utilities have gone up, for me, almost double. Groceries have gone up. Fortunately, this year they've kind of stabilized, but last year they went up pretty significantly. Anything imported I mean, it's crazy. I've always said there's nothing if you desire it, you can find it here. And now it's got to be a caveat. You can find it here, but be prepared to pull out gold pieces to pay for it. Imported items get really crazy. So if you're living on dollars or basically the exchange rate, that difference can become the difference between comfort and stress. Now, Turtle is perpetually stressed, so I think he would vouch for it. And I've certainly been stressed, but I've been stressed for a long time. So when the rate's around 3,900 or 4,000 or above, life feels kind of easy, But when the thing's dropping down to 3,700 or headed towards 3,600, your buying power disappears real fast. So if the dollar weakens and stays weak, some retirees simply can't maintain the life they came here for. Depends on, what did you spend everything that you had and set your life up in permanent pricing based on an exchange rate that is no longer there. So money can become a deciding factor. Now, I've always said, base it on go back in time and look at what the peso is and base your highs and lows. Don't overspend on rent and things like that based on those lows. Now, for this last calendar year or last 2 years, it's been kind of difficult because we got the declining peso, and add to that some pretty high inflation. So even if you had calculated, and this is where I'm beginning to fall into, even if you had calculated, well, the minimum of the peso, but you also have to factor in the inflation that was kind of unexpected because we haven't had a history of that kind of inflation. Well, now you got a double whammy, and it can really, what you felt was a safety buffer, kind of, you can be tipping over into it. Question. Let me get to this question. Olga, has Mike been able to determine why he is having visa issues each time he renews? He thinks he has, and it's nothing. I don't want to talk about his personal information. It's nothing that is bad. It isn't anything that should cause a problem, but I can understand. I think he's right. I think it could possibly be the issue. Or maybe they just don't like him. I don't know. I don't know. Nothing for sure. All right. Then we've got issues of crime or cartel violence, safety shifting. So safety in Colombia is extremely local. A neighborhood can be quiet and comfortable one year, and the next year something changes and you get noise, maybe petty crime, drug activity, new neighbors with different habits. Sometimes it's a small shift. Other times it's big enough to make people say, this isn't the environment I moved for. And often in that environment, they'll perceive it as Colombia has become XYZ. Where if they move 2 barrios over, it would be very different. But the only constant is change. Things are always in flux, and you get some bad people move into a barrio, you get a spike, people get fed up with it, police get involved. Next year it's all back to normal again. But if you're there and you're not familiar with it and you haven't lived in the environment, you can figure, hell, this isn't what I wanted. One break-in or one bad encounter can be enough for some expats to rethink their entire plan and think it's unsafe. What was it? Somebody posed a question to me in the last few days about Colombia. If I'm in Colombia, they were talking about going to Medellin. I like to work in coffee shops, digital nomad. I like to work in coffee shops. So I have my laptop. Is it dangerous to the point where if I get up and go to the bathroom, I might come back and find my laptop gone? And I'm thinking, All right, what city in the United States the size of Medellin would you go to the bathroom and not have a risk of your laptop disappearing? The bigger the city, the more apt those things will happen because you have more anonymous people. The smaller the city, the smaller the town, the more people know each other and the less likely that that's going to happen. It's not a function of being Colombia, it's a function of being of humanity and how these things work. So, and she asked me a couple other things about her cell phone and things like that. And I'm in the gym and I'm exercising, but I don't want to hang on to my cell phone. What do I do with it? What do you do in gyms? You have lockers. You lock it in lockers. That's what people do. People do that all over the United States. I'm sure all over Canada, all over Europe. That's what you do. Why? Because you never know when somebody's going to take a cell phone from you. It has nothing to do with Colombia. So, I was kind of flabbergasted, but it's ingrained in people that everything about Colombia is unsafe. There are certain things you need to know that are unique to Colombia, like certain areas of the country you don't go to. On the other hand, I could think of lots of areas around Los Angeles and Baltimore and Detroit where you'd be an idiot to go to them. So it's not unique to Colombia, but what is unique about Colombia is the endless movies in the 80s about kidnappings and things that were real, but that was 40, 50 years ago, and things have changed a lot. Okay, so I got sidetracked. Okay, number 5. Yeah. Family and emotional factors. And, people can underestimate this, especially when you hear me talking, because these things don't faze me. Almost all of my family's gone. And, I'm a cold-hearted, cold-blooded person anyway, so I don't get homesick. I'd get homesick if I left here. But for a lot of people, it's not the case. And if you're retired, maybe you've got children who are having your grandchildren. Maybe you're having a birth or you're having a wedding or things that, you sit here and say, I'm missing out on this stuff. So living here can mean missing family events, missing certain milestones, or watching your parents age from a distance, depending on your age. Not being there when somebody needs you. That could really eat away. Some expats wake up one morning and realize the emotional cost of being away is higher than they expected. It happens more often than people want to admit. And I know a number of people that's happened. They hated to leave. They didn't want to leave. They had no intention of leaving, but they're spending more time back there because of events that they missed and they didn't want to miss anymore. For many people, the majority of people, I think the more sane and well-rounded people, it's a big thing. Pardon me. Trying to keep my voice from falling apart. I'm doing pretty good today. Okay, number 6, social fatigue and isolation. Another thing that I'm kind of immune to, fortunately. I think Mike, he's another one that's kind of immune to. William, he's like that. But living in a different culture, it takes effort. You're constantly adapting, translating, navigating, and guessing. Even people who Colombia sometimes hit a wall. I have a couple times. Sometimes you get language fatigue. I've got this thing. I go out. It's only Spanish. I know that. I accept it. I throw my pitiful version of Spanish and get things done and get understood. But after a couple hours, I get a headache. It causes me a headache because my brain isn't good enough with Spanish. And at this point, I would have thought it'd go away, but it doesn't, or it hasn't yet. It's just not good enough. I still do a certain amount of conscious translating. So instead of just hearing it in automatic, now there's a lot of words and phrases that I hear it and it passes through me as though it were in English. But unfortunately, there's lots of things that hit me and I have to think about it. What is that? And then, I remember. And now you got to try to catch up and maybe you miss some things. It can be exhausting. And for me, I get a real bad headache. And another side effect is I run into somebody who's another English speaker, which isn't very often actually for me. I talk their ear off because I haven't talked to, this is a lifesaver because there's a lot of times I could go weeks at a time and not speak any English at all. And I'm not comfortable with that, So I meet up with somebody and it's like, I haven't seen a living person that spoke English in 3 weeks and I end up talking their ear off. You also get these cultural misunderstandings. And unfortunately, you often don't even realize it's a misunderstanding. You think somebody's doing you wrong. I've told the taxi story many times about how I screwed over and cheated a taxi driver, completely not knowing it. And to this day, feeling like crap because it happened. But it was a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, he got the short end of the stick. And for some people, they struggle to form deep friendships. Now, again, I'm being the psychopath that I am. I guess I don't really necessarily need deep friends, or at least only now and then. I have a few very close friends, but I only need to connect with them every so often. Whatever that, I don't know. I can't psychoanalyze at this point. But for a lot of people, they can come here and feel like an outsider and just feel lonely. And if they're not here with somebody, a partner, maybe if they're not outgoing, maybe the language gets in the way, it can pile up and it can end up wearing on some people to the point where that fatigue becomes another turning point. Okay, here's one that's more to do with me than most people, but it's an issue and it frustrates me sometimes. Like I said, there's so much good for me that I don't even think about leaving, but I could see where other people in a circumstance similar to me, this could be frustrating. That's the Dion, the tax pressure and the government bureaucracy. Now, even with a business, I haven't had to pay any tax. I don't have to. It appears, I just talked to the accountant the other day about something else, but it looks like I won't have to next year either. So it'll be 3 years at that point where I'm in the tax system, but I won't have to have paid tax. However, it's the records that you find out that they need that you didn't know that they needed. So if you're relatively new here and you don't know the name, Dion is Colombia's national tax authority. Basically, it's the IRS. Even retirees who aren't working sometimes have to deal with the Dion. I mean, if you own property, you're probably going to have to deal with them. If you're bringing any amount of money, and I don't mean like $1,000, but if you bring in $10,000 into Colombia, you're going to have to deal with them. If you open a local bank account, you will automatically have to deal with them. Or if you stay long enough to be considered a tax resident, you may have to deal with them. As I said, in the end, unless you're making an unusually high amount of money, talking retirement. So I know a lot of people that are $2,000 and less, and I've yet to meet any of them that file for taxes that have had to pay. However, I do know somebody who makes, I think it's around, he's got 2 retirements. I think it's around $2,800. And he had a circumstance where he's going to have to pay tax, but their tax laws are, there's one law will counteract another kind of thing. And he had an accountant that walked him through a legal way to avoid it. But he was in a situation for a little while, he thought he was going to have to pay a tax. I know somebody else who's married here with a business, and they got caught up and had to pay a million pesos, a couple $100. Also, it's an extreme thing, and it usually involves pretty large amounts of money, but the Dion can request specific documentation and freeze your funds. It can demand proof of income, which isn't that unusual because you have to do that for Visa anyway, or it could just open up a case file on you, a review. It doesn't happen to everyone. It doesn't happen very much, but if it does, it could be stressful. Just like if you're in the US and the IRS all of a sudden decides that they're going to review your last 3 years of income tax returns. That happened to me twice. I had businesses, and it's your heart stops in your throat. You get through it, and if you're even close to being reasonably legal, you're generally good to go. But while you're going through it, it's not a fun thing. And I think there's a lot of things that they copy here from the IRS. So some expats decide they don't even want to run into the possibility of that, particularly in a foreign language, and think maybe I'm going to bail. Again, if you go back to the US, you can run into it there. And if you go to another country, you can run into it there, but it does exist here. For almost nobody, unless you're really wealthy. But if you're really wealthy, you can afford it. Natural disasters and infrastructures. Now, this is more perceived than reality. But, Colombia is beautiful, but it sits on shifting ground. Earthquakes happen. We're on the ring of fire, just like all of California, just all over the place. Landslides happen. That's pretty common because of the amount of rain we get, and roads will wash out. Now, if you're not living out in the small towns, chances are it's probably not going to affect you. Here in Armenia, it never affects us here. But there's been a couple times when I wanted to go to one of the towns south of here, and the roads were closed. Couldn't get through, and they were closed for a week. Salento this last year, they were closed down a couple times for, a handful of days. I think one time for a week. So that's an issue. Now, some people are fine with that, like me, because even if it happened, well, I got enough, work to do and keep me busy. I'm retired, so my time is my own. But the others are kind of panic. It's like, I'm not built for this. I don't want to deal with it. Even if it's something that happens once every 10 years. As I was doing this, I was remembering some things that, like, I lived in upstate New York, and there, every so often, we get these hella winters. We'll get an ice storm. We'll get 20 below zero weather sometimes. You get snowstorms where within a couple of days you get 3 feet of snow. Nothing's going anywhere. And how many times we say to each other, to hell with this, I'm done with this. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Yet most people put up with it. What drives them out of upstate New York is more things that happen in New York City and taxes, things like that. It's not actually the weather. But to hear everybody talk, everybody's headed to, all places down south. So, most places seem to have something to contend with. But if you're not used to what's here, if you see what happened in 1999 with the earthquake here, and you didn't look into it, and you didn't really understand it, you think, oh my God, what if we get hit again? And I'm one of the people that die, or I'm in a building that collapses or whatever. It's more of an understanding, but it can be a real factor. Well, let me we're running over time a little bit. Let me. I want to pick your brains a little bit. So I've got a few questions that I want to throw out there. If you have almost left Colombia, or if you're planning on leaving Colombia, Mike, I already know about you. Were any of these reasons, or was there a combination of these that applied to you? What would make you leave in the future? Is there anything in particular that would make you leave? Have you ever left and come back? And what would that reason been? Has the neighborhood that you're living in gotten better or worse since you've been in that neighborhood? Would a weaker dollar, say 3,500 pesos, and not rising, would that change your plans? Would that make all the difference? Has healthcare ever been a deciding factor for you? I'm serious about these questions. So if there's any that hit home, please say something about it. What city or town in Colombia, whether it was on a visit or living here, made you feel the safest? And was there a city or town that didn't make you feel very safe? Have you ever felt isolated here? Now, I'll be shocked if there's somebody that never felt isolated. Have Dion or visa issues ever pushed you close to leaving? I got a question here. Let's see. Here we go. I love Colombia. The Panama visa has many advantages to be American. One time and good for life. I can spend 6 months in Colombia, 6 in Panama without ever dealing with another visa. Unless they change their laws. And they're overdue for an update. Most countries after COVID went through updates. Sadly, Colombia's was pretty awesome before, and it's nowhere near as good. But on the other hand, they went with what most countries do. New York retired. We are coming back because of healthcare in the U.S. and the affordability in Colombia and family. I'm concerned about safety in Colombia. Safety, it's a double-edged sword, and I every time it comes up, I compare it to the U.S. Like where I'm from in upstate New York, you don't have to lock your front door, you don't have to lock your car, but if you go into the city, you want to lock your car. It depends. Crime, safety, all of those things, it all depends on where you are in particular. And what the trends are. The trends were escalating crime. It seems like crime is retrenching in the US. Here, we're in a point where it's not so much crime that's going through changes. It has more to do with groups like the FARC or the ELN. Because these last few years of this administration, they've been kind of emboldened because nothing's really happened as they violate various treaties and things, or just human rights, kidnapping children to be in their little militia, pretty disgusting, nasty things involved with cartels, mostly controlled by Mexico. Those can be expanding issues in their area. Now, the one nice thing about the coffee triangle is that coffee is hugely important to Colombia. It's the second biggest moneymaker, last I knew. It's a huge thing. Plus, it has so much to do with the identity of Colombia that they will do everything they possibly can to make sure that those groups aren't here. And we see it in Quindío last year and earlier this year. There were a number of times when one of these groups tried to set up a little satellite operation, within a few days got shut down and run out of town. In a couple cases got thrown in prison. So they're on it. And that's why you'll constantly see these road checks, because they're very careful about it. So it depends where you live. So we live in kind of a safety bubble here in the Coffee Triangle, but that doesn't mean we're not susceptible to somebody picking your pocket or taking your cell phone or things like that. It can happen. Things like shootings or like that are almost entirely isolated to crime on crime. Rival, this guy's selling drugs and this guy's selling drugs, and he thinks that they stepped on his toes or whatever, and 2:00 in the morning, he gets shot. It'll make the paper and like that, but it's arm's length from you. It's a distant thing. BB, yes, I knew that. Their visa regulations are in their constitution. Yeah, the laws are the laws, and they haven't been changed since 2022. But people can they write laws. This is a real issue, and this isn't just a Colombia thing. This is a South American thing. This is part of what I ran into in Ecuador. Why are there personalities that can get involved in certain aspects if a law is a law? Well, the law is a law. However, they write it with gray areas. They're not, just like in conversation, it's difficult to pin a Colombian or a South American down to something very specific. They talk around things. They're very vague about things. They write the laws the same way. And so when it comes to interpreting those laws, it requires a certain amount of interpretation. And so one person can interpret it one way, one the other. They're both following the law because the law wasn't clear enough. And that's what we run into. We have that a lot with the healthcare issue. First, we were required to have EPS. We had to buy it. Then this last year, they changed it to you can't have EPS if you go to get your visa. But then countless people, after they got their visa, signed up for it anyway, and there were no problems, no penalties. And when they went to get their visa after that, all they did was cancel it and not say anything about it, and got themselves a little $200 policy, got their visa, and then when that was over, then they reopened their EPS, or they never canceled it and it was still there. There's ways around a lot of these things because there is so much gray area. Okay, let's see. All right, so I guess I have a final word here. Loving Colombia doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. Right, Mike? Because it's not. There's pluses and minuses. It's all on a scale. And planning to stay here doesn't mean you never reevaluate. Could something come up for me that would cause me to leave? Yeah, I could see that, because I can be an arbitrary person. I might get not as bad as Turtle. Turtle's constantly reaching for something different. I have tendencies like that, but I've just been so happy here that, I'm going on my 7th year, and I don't want to leave. I don't even want to leave the country to visit something. I just want to be here. However, I could wake up, something happen, and wake up next week and decide I'm going to go visit Mike in Panama and maybe stay there. I mean, you never know. If the exchange rate dropped down to 2,500, I'd probably look for somewhere else to live, because I probably couldn't afford it here at the way the prices are. So, people, I have to laugh, because people come here and they visit Colombia and all they talk about is how cheap it is. And I'm here. It's like I'm here watching that inflation climb, And it's going, oh my God, it's getting expensive. Well, objectively, it's not, because inflation hits other places also. Other countries are dealing with similar things. But if you've been here for any period of time, walk in and look at that restaurant menu is a shocker. For an example, this is Beludo. I could walk in there and order up a steak, and it would be around the 20,000 peso, like 28,000 pesos when I originally went there. Everything's the same steak, all the same people, same view, all of that. And that same steak now was over 80,000 for that steak lunch or dinner. I mean, it's like what, three times plus. I mean, it's insane from my point of view, to the point where, okay, 20,000, yeah, I could do that. I'm, used to that. That was a good price. $8, what the hell? Well, now you're looking at being $20 for that dinner. So yeah, that could get to me, but that would be a practical thing where I couldn't afford to be here if it ever got that low. Okay, it would be kind of like watching your retirement get cut in half. Yeah, it wouldn't be fun. All right, last call for any questions or comments. I didn't have a lot of people commenting today, and sadly, I need them. But just so you know, I had a number of people write in the comments after the video was no longer live. I don't get credit for that. I only get credit for the live chat, the one that we're looking at, the one that's up on the screen up, where is it? There. I only get credit for those. But that's it. I don't see any more questions, no more comments. So we're going to wrap it up here. We got one more, and then we'll call it a day. Looking at all things logically and looking at the good and bad, just making sure it is what you can live with. I think this topic is good to go over. Yeah, that was the other thing. I started because of Mike, but then I thought about it. People that are coming here, we always talk about, oh, this is great and that's good and this is this and, the upside of it. But what would be the reasons you might not want to come? And so these are it. Now, again, I hope I put it in perspective. I mean, it's like for me, all of those things are real, but for me, they amount to like this much, because everywhere I've ever lived, I've had to contend with stuff that I didn't like. I guess that's just the way it is. Okay, let me get back to where I was. Do I want to do a quick ad read? No, I'll wait. If I do one each week until the end of the month, I should be good. And we could do Sabrina. Turtle sent me a girl dancing, but it was only about 20 seconds worth, but it cracked me up. What happened to your friend in Norway or up that way? He hasn't been in recently because he's got some family things. I got an email from him. He said nothing bad. He's spending time with his grandkids. I think maybe watching them or something. And yeah, so he hasn't been in. It's not that he hasn't been in when it's live. You pretty much hit it. Yeah. Mike, I gave everything that you've said a lot of thought. And I think about it as compared to other people. I mean, that's how I came up with this list. And I've always understood it. I'm skeptical about Panama simply because of the things that you say about it, simply because I know a number of people that lived in Panama and left for particular reasons, and some of them are related to the things that you say are really good, and they left because it wasn't that way. So that's the only thing that concerns me. if you leave for any period of time and you lose out on your ability to keep your visas intact so that you can quit doing the 1-year visas, you're only one visa away from that. That was my concern, that you leave, you find out it's not the way that you think it is, you come back, but now you got to start from ground zero and do 5 more years, instead of being 1 year away from getting your permanent residency. That was the only thing, to go there, that seemed fine. But that was my concern for you. I hope what other people have told me doesn't turn out to be what your experience is. But I don't know personally, so I'm open to whatever it is, and I'll learn from you. You'll tell me. Let's see. Glad he's okay. Yeah, me too. I was worried about. I actually sent him an email. Are you okay? Because he's usually like the first one here in the chat, and I did a couple things about Finland that I wanted him to see it, and he wasn't there to see it. Particularly that Finnish Girl. Finnish Girl Reacts is the YouTube name, and it really cracks me up. And I'm gratified to see she came in a month ago with a couple hundred views, but she was interesting enough where her naivete is what is attractive about her channel. It's like watching through the eyes of an infant learning about the world. And she is now up to somewhere around 50,000, 1 month up to around 50,000 subscribers. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, but it's like, it wasn't just me that saw something. You can leave for 2 years. You can leave for 2 years you let your visa expire, leave for 2 years and come back and start again. No, you can't do that. If you have a visa and it's good during that period of time, you can leave the country, but the visa has to be intact. If the visa expires, or if you don't apply for a new one when you need it, it's done. It's over. That's it. You can, you can check on that to verify, but I'm pretty sure, because I've known a couple people that happened to. We're all kinds of pissed off. Panama, hot. Yeah, that was one of the things about Panama. And he's talking about, there is a mountain you can go up and you can live up there, and it's much better temperatures. The only problem is the cost of living up there is considerably higher, because everybody wants to live up there, and the higher you go up, the more expensive it is. But I don't know. We'll see. They have a coffee region there. That's true. Yeah, that's the mountain. They're up on the mountain, and I get that. But you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me what's real. Because you never know what people leave someplace and they don't want to tell you the real story, and they make things up. You never know. I know that whatever you find, you'll tell me, and it'll be real. Not that it'll matter much, but you never know. Maybe Colombia goes to war with Venezuela, and or goes to war with the United States just because he hates the U.S. and decides he's got these air superiority fighters, and his 15 are going to take down the F-35 sitting out on the carrier. And next thing we know, we're getting strafed all over the place, and we got to flee for our lives and, run to Panama. It'll be good to know, right? I hope nobody's taking that serious. All right, go Bills. Fingers crossed. Hope they can pull themselves together. It's been shaky. And I will see you next Sunday. Ciao.
Oh.